You were lied to. Not by a scammer, not by some shady internet ad, by your parents, your teachers, your bank, and every financial influencer who ever told you that buying a home was the smartest thing you'd ever do with your money. And here's the thing, most of them genuinely believed it. But belief doesn't make something true. And in 2026, the math on homeownership has turned into something that should terrify anyone between 20 and 50 years old who's still chasing that dream of building equity. Let me show you what's actually happening. The average home price in the United States hit $420,000 in early 2024. Mortgage rates at that time were hovering around 7.5%. That means a standard 30-year mortgage on a median-priced American home with a 20% down payment would cost you roughly $2,350 a month just in principal and interest, before property taxes, before insurance, before the water heater that breaks in year 3. Now run that math over 30 years. You'll pay somewhere around $846,000 total for a house that costs $420,000. That's not wealth creation, that's a wealth transfer to the bank. And nobody talks about that part. I don't know why. Here's the mythology we've all absorbed. Real estate always goes up, always, and if it goes up, you win. But winning requires you to sell, and most people don't. They live in the house, they raise kids in the house, they get emotionally attached to the house, and then they die in the house, leaving behind an asset that their children will either fight over or sell at the bottom of a local market they don't understand. Robert Shiller, Nobel Prize winner in economics, the man behind the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, published research showing that from 1890 to 1990, the inflation-adjusted return on American residential real estate was essentially zero. 100 years, almost nothing. Zero. That's not a talking point, that's a century of data. Now, I know what you're thinking, but rent is throwing money away. I've heard this sentence approximately 10,000 times in my life, and every time I have to resist the urge to flip a table. Renting is not throwing money away. Renting is paying for shelter, a service you need to survive. The interest you pay in a mortgage in the first decade, which is the vast majority of your payment, is also throwing money away. To a bank. Except with the mortgage version, you also get to throw money at property taxes, maintenance, insurance, and the psychological weight of knowing your roof might cave in at any moment. Honestly, when you lay it out like that, renting starts to look pretty reasonable. Let me tell you what Japan figured out, the hard way. In 1991, Japanese real estate collapsed after one of the most spectacular property bubbles in modern history. Tokyo land prices fell by more than 80% over the following decade. People who had borrowed everything to buy homes in 1989 found themselves trapped, paying mortgages on properties worth a fraction of what they owed. The Japanese call it the lost decade. It actually lasted 2 decades. And here's what's fascinating. After that trauma, Japan restructured its entire relationship with housing. Japanese homes are now designed to depreciate. Literally. The average Japanese house loses all of its structural value within 30 years. They tear them down and rebuild. Because the Japanese decided that housing should be a place to live, not a financial instrument. Is that radical? Yes. Is it also kind of sane? I think so. Meanwhile, in Singapore, the government owns 80% of the housing stock through the Housing Development Board. Citizens can buy long-term leases, 99 years, on apartments, but the state retains control. The result is one of the most stable, affordable housing markets in Asia, in a city with a land area smaller than Los Angeles. Switzerland has one of the lowest homeownership rates in the developed world, around 36%, and yet Switzerland consistently ranks as one of the wealthiest nations per capita on Earth. Swiss people rent. Swiss people also hold more wealth per person than almost any other country. Let that sit for a second. The countries with the most stable wealth aren't the ones where everyone scrambles to own a piece of dirt. So where does that leave you? Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The American dream of homeownership was partly a policy choice, not a natural economic truth. After World War II, the U.S. government, through institutions like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, through the mortgage interest tax deduction, through aggressive suburban development, literally engineered a society where buying a home seemed not just smart, but morally correct. It was an infrastructure decision dressed up as wisdom. And it worked brilliantly for a generation. From roughly 1950 to 2000, you could buy a house, stay in one city, raise a family, retire, and leave your kids something. The math worked. Communities were stable. Jobs lasted. Interest rates were manageable. That world is gone. Today, the average American moves 11.7 times in their lifetime. The knowledge economy rewards mobility, the ability to chase the best job, the hottest market, the right opportunity. But home ownership punishes mobility. Transaction costs on buying and selling a home typically run between 8 and 10% of the home's value. That's an enormous anchor. Every time you buy and sell, you give up nearly a year's worth of the home's total value in fees, commissions, and closing costs. If you bought in 2021 near the peak and had to sell in 2023 because your company relocated you, you know exactly what I mean. And in my opinion, this is the most underrated reason home ownership is dangerous for people under 40. Not the mortgage, not the maintenance, the lock-in. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the endowment effect. The idea that we value things more once we own them simply because we own them. Your house triggers this hard. You bought it, you painted the walls, you planted that garden. Now you're psychologically incapable of objectively evaluating whether holding this asset makes financial sense. This is why people stay in markets that have clearly peaked. This is why people refuse to sell when the rational move would be to sell. The house isn't just a house anymore. It's identity. It's proof that you made it. And identity is very, very expensive to let go of. Now, and I want to be clear here, I'm not saying nobody should ever buy a home. That would be absurd. If you're going to stay in one place for more than 10 years, if you have real financial stability, if you have a large enough down payment to keep your monthly costs genuinely lower than renting a comparable space, the math can work. It can. For some people, in some markets, at some points in time, homeownership makes complete financial sense. But it's a lifestyle choice that can be financially justified, not a universal law of wealth building. The difference matters enormously. Here's what the wealthy actually do, and I mean people with real multi-generational wealth, not people with nice houses and a retirement account that barely keeps up with inflation. They invest in productive assets, stocks, index funds, private equity, businesses that generate cash flow. The S&P 500 has returned an average of roughly 10.5% annually over the last 50 years. A broad index fund bought in 1974 and held until 2024 would have turned $10,000 into approximately $1.7 million. Your house, in the same period, even with appreciation, almost certainly didn't come close to that when you account for all costs. The wealthy treat housing as overhead. They control their housing cost, minimize it where possible, and pour the difference into things that actually compound. This is the thing that nobody tells you when you're 28 and excited about your first mortgage. I've read a lot about this topic, and the detail that changed everything for me was this. In 2023, a study from Wharton professor Itai Goldstein found that for most middle-income American households, the family home represents more than 60% of their total net worth. More than 60%! Think about what that means in terms of portfolio theory. Any first-year finance student will tell you, concentration in a single illiquid asset is one of the riskiest positions you can hold. You'd never put 60% of your money into a single stock. You'd be called reckless, irresponsible, dangerous. But when it's a house, we call it the American dream. So what's the move? Honestly, the answer isn't one size fits all, but the framework is. Stop treating housing as the center of your financial life. Start thinking of it as one line item among many. If renting gives you flexibility, capital to invest, and lower monthly costs in your market, rent. and invest the difference aggressively. If buying makes sense in your specific situation, buy. But don't pretend the mortgage is an investment strategy. Your financial life should not be a single bet on one house in one zip code. The real question, the one I keep coming back to, is this: why did we build an entire culture around one asset class? Why did we stake the middle class's financial security on something as illiquid, as location-dependent, as emotionally complicated as a house? And here's the quiet irony at the end of all this. The people who most aggressively pushed the idea that everyone should own a home, the banks, the real estate industry, the mortgage servicers, they don't keep most of their own wealth in real estate. They keep it in stocks. Think about that the next time someone tells you that renting is throwing money away.